Today, our three managing directors have the difficult job of choosing the winners of the Ambic STEM Challenge 2024.
Right then guys, so thank you for joining me on the panel of judges for 2024 Ambic STEM Challenge. It means a lot. Obviously, thank you for accepting the invitation. We've got some fantastic sponsors involved, but obviously you guys have given the best sort of feedback in terms of what we've got in front of us. Great results this year, 43 schools involved, which for most of them they've ran it as a full year competition, so that's 5,000 kids potentially participated this year. It's mind-blowing, to be perfectly honest. I never thought we'd get this big. But in terms of secondary schools, we've got our three finalists in front of us. So if we start in no particular order, we've got Cheryl Peskett, I think is the teacher from Northfield School and Sports College. And this is the Legitimate Locks is the name of the project. So to me, it looks pretty good, this one, guys. We've got a CAD model which has been designed on the computer, which is pretty clear. Some great descriptive text on there as well, and they've also done a cardboard actual physical locker. So what do we think of this one, guys?
I quite like you said, mentioned you've got the 3D model. We wanted to involve the kids and get them to look at all the different aspects. So if we're looking at this as technical and actually designing it, you could build that. Looking at that drawing, we could build that bit of furniture and you would know it's exactly what it was meant to be. So that part of the design brief, spot on.
I totally agree, and I think from my point of view, making furniture every day, one of the things that a lot of people might not understand looking at this particular design is the thought that's behind the dimensions. As soon as you draw something on CAD, it adds another dimension to, if you're drawing something on a piece of paper, you can kind of make it look sort of right. But if you're drawing on CAD, it's a dimension, and it's got to be dimensioned up right. So I think there's a lot more work gone into this than sort of you first see. So I've actually scored this one pretty high on execution personally. But I think that's really good. What about yourself, Helen?
Yeah, to be quite honest with you, further from what you said, to be quite honest with you, that cardboard looks like a bit of wood. It looks like a really, really good finish. I'm really impressed with that. And as you say, with the CAD drawings and everything like that, it really, really brings it to life. I scored it really high in execution because I thought it was brilliant. So that's where I stand on that one. I scored it a little bit lower on originality.
Yeah, I think I've got to agree. I think when it comes to originality and creativity, I think it is a locker. It's got a charging station in there. There's some thought behind that. My question is, it's a furniture competition. Is this something you can maybe buy off the shelf? Is it something that's already available? I'm not saying that it necessarily is, but yeah, I think in terms of flair, I'm not sure. What do you think, Stuart?
Yeah, I think looking at some of the other drawings, other designs and that, you can see a little bit more creativity coming out. So I think, once we go through the rest of them, I think it'll soon shine out which ones are good and bad.
Brilliant. So we'll move on to our second finalist for the secondary schools. So this is the teacher again, I think is Michael Emmett. The school is Venerable Bede C of E Academy. And this one is, it's quite striking as you look at it, for sure. In terms of the design, there's a little model which we've been given there. Which they've made out of, it looks like perhaps balsa wood. Looks like they've thought about quite a lot of detail. What do you think to this one, guys?
Yeah, this one does stand out. Creativity wise, you can see they've probably used some sort of laser cutter or something like that. The design's very sharp, just down to even hinges and things like that. They've thought about it. So for me, scoring really high on creativity bit, that really does look like a striking bit of furniture.
Yeah, one question mark I do have for this one particularly is, obviously there's a lot of slats around the edge and we've got a circle which looks striking, but it's for outside. So one question mark I would have over the gaps between the slats. Can water maybe get in? Can we get a bit of water ingress perhaps? But I do agree in terms of creativity. They've taken a cupboard and they've definitely added a third dimension, if you like. What do you think, Helen?
I love it. I think it's a really, really, really good design on this one, to be quite honest with you. It looks like it could have been made in a furniture shop, to be quite honest with you. I think it's definitely got legs. It's a really, really good one. Originality, obviously there's been cabinets made in the past, but I think the execution was scored really, really high on that one. And the creativity as well, I scored high on that one as well. I thought was great.
Yeah, I think I've got to agree with Helen on this one. I think execution definitely high. I've scored it a little bit lower on an originality just because mainly because it's a cupboard. I do have a question mark over the fact that I know that the design itself doesn't have casters on, but you can see that it's meant to have casters on it, and I would just worry about, from a health and safety point of view, having a big circle on casters. You know, we don't want to get any children squashed. But for sure, I think, you know, the design is definitely striking.
Yeah.
But I can also add there, if you read the brief and what they've tried to do, it does need to be weatherproof, as in it goes outside, but looking at the brief and the way they've talked about it, they said possibly could have wheels on, wheeled across distances. So I think this is a cupboard for outdoor use, but it's not staying outdoors. So when we're saying about weatherproof and stuff like that, it does quite clearly state they've thought about that, saying they want to be able to move it around. That's why the wheels rather than the casters. So I think, given the brief and then look at the drawing, I think the two combine really well. So that does sort of clarify for me, it is, you know, you can score it quite high in a couple of different areas. So that's a very nice design.
Good stuff. So, and then we've got another one from Cheryl Pesquet. Oh, another one's made the final here, from Northfield School and Sports College. Well done, Northfield School and Sports College, getting 2 into the final. That's a great effort. So this one is specifically, it's a desk for somebody in a wheelchair. So this particular student's obviously spent a bit of time looking at the problem with regards to access for wheelchair-bound students. I mean, that's impressive. I'm trying to work out whether the student themselves know whichever. I don't think they are. I think they've assessed the problem for disabled access. I mean, that looks pretty good. What do we think to that one?
I think the brief, like you say, hit the nail on the head. They've identified a real problem that they've got for somebody or many people in that school. You could relate that to other schools. You know, I think the brief and the design's quite good. So there's 2 areas, you know, it would score quite high on.
Yeah, with this one, I actually really like the idea of it. I really do. I don't know how practicality it would be to actually to solve the problem wheeling a table around. Somebody potentially that is on wheels under a table with wheels. I really do like the concept and what it's trying to overcome and the problem it's trying to solve. I love that. I just don't think that. And I love the creativity as well. It's bang on with that. Scored really high on the creativity. I just don't think the solution for a disabled wheelchair access with a table on wheels would actually be a good solution and
I think I echo
and work. Do you know what I'm trying to say on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I echo exactly what you're saying there. I mean, I scored it incredibly high on creativity.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of execution, I'd just be concerned about, obviously, 2 things on wheels. You know, kind of need one thing fixed particularly, but also having a wheel on a leg creates less leg space, whereas you need to get a wheelchair underneath. I totally agree. I think we're on the same wavelength.
I think the concept is great, because I was even thinking the concept's absolutely brilliant about the table, but maybe it's a table that goes onto the wheelchair or something differently, but that's changing the design of what's actually being built. But yeah, definitely love the
quite
attempt
nice
for the
to
solution
see,
to a problem.
It's quite nice to see different things though, because we've got a CAD drawing, we've got an actual 3D laser type cut machine. This one's actually been made up of sort of like Meccano type parts and stuff. So I like the idea that
every school's
3 different designs.
Completely different outlook on it, haven't they?
So I think for the actual design, the brief and the thought of it is really good. Like you say, maybe it could have been executed at the end stronger, but still a nice design.
I think it goes without saying, obviously these 3 have been selected as our finalists, so you know at this point in the competition it gets really difficult, doesn't it, to pick which one is actually
we've seen
the
so
best.
Many good ones, haven't we? There's
been a few good ones. These definitely are the standouts for all the reasons we've just mentioned there, you know. So I mean, it's actually across the 3, it's 2 schools, so well done to Northfield School and Sports College, and well done to Venerable Bede C&V Academy, I suppose. So doing a little bit like boxing, I suppose. So I've scored. So if we start with the first one we discussed, so Northfield School, which is the locker, legitimate locks it's called. So I've scored that on originality a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I've got the same 5.
I've got the same.
5 as well.
Did we copy each other's homework on this one?
It almost seems like that, doesn't it? Creativity, I also scored it on a 5.
I've got it as a 6.
I've got that as 5.
Okay, and then execution, I give it a 10 out of 10 because I feel like the actual what they've put together is faultless.
I went with a 9, which is
very
good as me.
But you're a tough customer, aren't you? I went with a 10 on that one as well, because I thought that was brilliant with the execution. But
fantastic. So that's a 20 overall for that school, and we've got Venerable Bede C&V Academy. I mean, I'm going to be honest, guys. I scored this a 10 out of 10 for both creativity and execution.
Me as well.
I've got a 9, 10 and a 9, so
that's pretty high on both counts.
Yeah.
I think originality, I had to mark it down a little bit just because it is quite original, but it is a cupboard, and I feel like as Stuart, I think you mentioned slightly earlier in terms of comparing it to some of the other designs we've had in, the design is really striking, but it is a cupboard, and I feel like, you know, circles obviously aren't the most practical for internals, but I do get it's, you know, visually quite striking. So originality, I still scored it really high. I don't know why I'm talking it down. I still give it an 8 out of 10.
I give it an 8 as well.
You give it an 8 as well?
I give it an 8 as well, yeah, because even though it is a cupboard, you don't see many massive circle cupboards in the school, do you?
No.
That look like that. So at the end of the day, it's a good attempt.
I think that's because they've got the picture and the model. We know exactly what it should look like. They've asked for it to be, you know, made in metal, but the model's in wood. Finish that off in a wood. I think that's something that schools would buy. I think that's something that you could actually go to that next extent. So
agreed.
Execution wise, I think that's quite a high scoring.
Yeah, absolutely. Which leaves us with our last one, which is the wheelchair access table from Northfield School and Sports College. So I think we talked about this or touched on this slightly earlier, Helen. I scored this a 10 out of 10 for creativity. I think in terms of creativity, I love the fact that they've been quite selfless. They've looked at problems that potentially children in wheelchairs are having around the school, and they're trying to make sort of those particular people have a much better experience in school, which I think is fantastic. So in terms of creativity, I think the problem they've come up with and the solution is very good. What yourselves?
Yeah, I think the only thing for me on this particular one is the execution of it. I don't think I couldn't build that right now and think that that's going to be a finished article
without a bit more.
I think it needs a little bit of tweaking. Health and safety needs to kick in a bit more with wheels and things like that, which we've mentioned. But creativity and that great. Execution wise, I think that's the only bit that lets that struggle a little bit.
Yeah, I did give it a 10 out of creativity because I thought it was really, really creative in what they were trying to overcome. Execution, for exactly the same reason we just discussed, I give them a 5 out of 10 for that. And originality, I don't know, I'll give it a 10 because I don't see many people trying to like literally create a table for wheelchairs and disabled access, to be quite honest with you. So I thought for a young adult, young adolescent to be actually coming up with that, I think that was quite good.
Yeah, it's definitely selfless, that's for sure.
Yeah.
On originality and execution, I give it a 7 out of 10, which is still pretty good. So for me, that was number 2, but I think we're all in agreement looking through the scores that we've all given them. There's one resounding winner, and that is Venerable Bede C of E Academy. This teacher is Michael Emmett. I'm not quite sure which year group the pupil is in, but yeah, an absolute resounding win. So fantastically well done to those guys, eh?
Yeah, well done, amazing.